All right, good morning once again. We're going to continue with fractions today. We only have 2 pages, so I promise today's video will be shorter. However, I do want to do a short kind of demonstration and just show you, try and clear up how we see equivalent fractions. So for example, why 2/4 is equal to 1/2, 1/3 is equal to 2/6, those types of things. And the easiest way I would say to do that is with pictures. And I think I told you before that basically fractions it's a division sign. So when we say 1/4, and we use this as an example, equals 25%. And we use the example of $1. If you have 4 25s, 4 quarters, 4 25%, so 25 times 4, you would get 100%. Okay? So when we say 1/4, okay, or I have 4 out of 4, that is where we get 100% from. Okay? So if I have something divided into 4 1/4 of something, I have 25% of it. So 1/4 is equal to the same as 25%, as in 1/4 would equal 25 cents in a dollar. Okay? If I have 2, okay, so 2/4 of something, that would be equal to 50%. Okay? So 2/4 would be 50% or half of 100. Okay? So other known as 50 cents of a dollar. Okay? And then 3/4 would equal 75% or 75 cents. Okay? And then 4/4 would be I have 100% or a full dollar if I have 4 quarters. Okay? Now when we talk about equivalent fractions, the reason this works is if I say I have 1/3, basically that means I have 1 out of 3 or something, or I do 1 out of 3 of something. And I think of it as baseball or basketball. If I hit the ball 1 out of 3 times, I hit the ball 33% of the time. Okay? Now, if we do a picture of that, so every 3 times I get up to bat, I get a hit or get on base 1 time. Okay? That means if I'm up to bat 6 times, I'm going to get 1 more hit. Okay? So that would give me 2/6 or another 1/3. Okay? So let's say I'm up to bat another 3 times. I'm going to hit the ball 1 of those times again. Okay? So altogether now, I have 6 times that I've been up and 2 times I got a hit. And that still is equal to 33%. Okay? Same thing if I'm up 3 more times, I'm going to get 1 more hit. Okay? So now altogether I have 3/9. That still equals 33%. Okay? So what that means is that 1/3 is equal to 2/6, is also equal to 3/9. Okay? And we can keep going like that. If I was up 3 more times, I would get 1 more hit. And now I have 4 out of 12 times I get a hit. And again, it still equals 33%. Okay? So that's kind of how we get equivalent fractions. So as far as our work goes, this is a little bit maybe easier way to look at it, is all of these fraction bars are the same size. If you look at, we just talked about 1/3, right? So if I look at 1/3 and I go down, it's going to be equal to these things. Okay? So the only thing that it's equal to on this one is 1/3 is the same as 2/6. So 1/6 plus 1/6 would be 2/6. When we talk about 1/2, you can see all of the things that 1/2 is equal to. So 1/2 is going to be equal to anything that it lines up with. Okay? So 1/2 is going to be equal to 1/2/4. 1/2 is going to be equal to 1/2/3/6. 1/2 is going to be equal to 1/2/3 and 4/8. Okay? So 2/4, 1/2, 3/6, and 4/8 are all equal to each other. They all equal 50% or half. So this is kind of what that bar is showing. I would maybe keep this page handy. It will be handy for you to go back to and reference as we go through some of these different problems to figure out what fractions are equivalent to each other. Okay. All right. So describe two patterns that you see in the fraction bars. It's kind of up to you. There are quite a few patterns that you could see that are there. And then compare, so we're using greater than, less than, or equal to symbols. Okay, so that will be really key to do here. So if you have 1/3 and 1/7, I'm going to look at this. Well, here's 1/7 and here's 1/3. Well, I think of it as, if I had my favorite candy bar, my favorite piece of pizza, would I rather have 1/3 or 1/7? Well, this is a much bigger piece. Okay, so I would rather have the bigger piece. That means 1/3 is greater. Okay, another way to think of it as you look at these bars is, the larger the denominator, so that bottom number, the more pieces it's split up into. Okay, so I still have one pizza or one candy bar. The number on the bottom tells me how many times I'm going to cut it up, which means my pieces get smaller and smaller and smaller. Okay, so if I have a pizza and I split it into 2 pieces, my piece is pretty big. Now if I split it into 8 pieces, my piece is pretty small. I would actually have to have 1, 2, 3, 4 of those pieces to equal half, okay? Or as much as I would have if I had 1 piece up here, I would need 4 of these pieces to have the same amount. Okay? All right, so 1/3 is greater than 1/7. 1/2 is greater than 1/3. So greater than is actually going to be the smaller denominator, and 1/6 would be greater than 1/7. Okay. Now this works as long as you have unit fractions. So as long as the numerator is 1, the smaller denominator is the greater fraction. Okay, I'll say that one more time. As long as you have unit fractions where the numerator is 1, the smaller the denominator, so 2, 3, and 6 in this case, the smaller the denominator, that means the greater the fraction is. So the larger piece I have. Okay. All right, next page. Compare unit fractions with number lines. Look, the number line shows unit fractions. Look for patterns in the number line. Okay. So describe a pattern that you see in the number line. One that I would see is, as we get smaller denominators, as we just said, so the smaller the denominator gets, the greater the piece is, right? So you see 1/8 would be this, I would have only this big of a piece. Okay? If I had 1/3, this would be the piece I would get. If I had 1/2, this would be the piece I would get. Okay? So that's one pattern to look for. You can choose whatever pattern, or if you see a different one that you'd like to describe, by all means go ahead. Number 6, so these fraction bars, or compare, use the fraction bar if needed. So again, I'm going to look for the smaller denominator, because one thing I noticed in 6, 7, 8, and 9, all of the fractions are unit fractions. So I'm going to look for the smaller denominator. Okay? So 1/3 would be greater than 1/8. 1/2 is greater than 1/4. 1/5 is greater than 1/8. 1/2 is greater than 1/8. Okay. Now we get into the numerator is bigger than 1, so it's not a unit fraction anymore. Okay. So now in this case, we want to look at we're still looking at the denominator, because the numerators are the same. So I should even say, if the numerator is the same, then we're going to look at the denominator, and whatever one is smaller is going to be the greater fraction. So in this case, 3/7 is going to be less than 3/4. 5/6 is going to be greater than 5/8. If you want to make a picture to help you with that, you're more than welcome to do that. Or again, we can go back and look at on our page before that. So if you want to do 3/7 and 3/4, we can go back here, and I can look. And here I'm going to say, well, this is 1, 2, 3/4. So I would have this large of a piece if I had 3/4. If I have 3/7, I'm going to have 1, 2, 3/7, and my piece is only going to be this big, right? So if I'm comparing here, right, it's quite a bit smaller than my 3/4. So use this page as needed. All right, and lastly, our last little bit here. So use the fraction bars on the number line. Between which two fractions is 1/5 on the number line? So if you look back up here, between, or 1/5 is between what? 1/6 and 1/4. Okay, so 1/5 is between 1/6 and 1/4. So you're going to put that here. And those can be in either order. I don't really care. Number 13, think about making a fraction bar for tenths. How many unit fractions would be in the fraction bar? So my example would be, I'm going to make a fraction bar, and I'm going to break it into tenths. Okay, so this is going to be 10 tenths, and 0 tenths. Okay. In the middle would be 5 tenths, because 5 is half of 10. And then I'm going to break it into, this would be 1/10, 2 tenths, 3 tenths, 4 tenths, 5 tenths, 6 tenths, 7 tenths, 8 tenths, and 9 tenths. Okay. So how many unit fractions would be in the fraction bar? It would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so there would be 9 in the fraction bar. How do you write the unit fraction? It would be 1/10. Okay. So there, each one is 1/10. So it's talking about each unit. So from here to here is 1/10. From here to here is 1/10. From here to here is 1/10, etc. Kind of like when we looped those. So each of those is 1/10 is what it's talking about. All right, so number 14, can the fraction bars for any unit fractions with even denominators always be split into 2 equal parts? Explain your thinking. Okay? So think about that a little bit and think of even denominators and maybe even try a couple. So if you have a fraction bar with unit fractions and even numbers as denominators, so think of like 1/2, 1/4, 1/6, those are all even numbered denominators. Okay? Can it always be split into 2 equal parts? Okay, so try a couple of those and think, okay, if my ending one is 2/2, sorry about that, and I make a fraction bar, so 2/2, this would be 0/2, and I would split it in half and it'd be 1/2. So can that one be split in half? Yes. Can this one? Can this one? If I made 1/8, can that one be split in half? Okay. So think about if that is true, and then explain your thinking for that one. Okay. And then the last one. So draw a picture to show how you can compare 1/6 and 1/8. So hint, hint. I would definitely advise you to go back a page and use your fraction bars that are on the previous page to show 1/6 and 1/8 and how you can compare those two. Okay. All right. Any questions? Miss Banks will be around. Otherwise, you can go ahead and get to work on homework.